What if I told you the most successful investor of all time isn't Warren Buffett, not Ray Dalio, but a quiet math professor named Jim Simmons? In 2008, when all investors were losing money, he was making billions. Not with gut instinct, not with Wall Street tricks, but with math. He built a trading system that spotted patterns no human could see, and he turned it into a machine that returned 66% a year for 10 years straight. This is the story of a man who cracked the market, and it all started 20 years earlier when he was breaking Soviet code messages in the Cold War. In the mid-1960s, Jim Simmons wasn't a billionaire or a famous investor. He was a young mathematician working quietly inside of America's Cold War defense system. After earning his PhD in geometry at just 23, Simmons wanted to apply his math skills to real-world problems. He didn't want to stay in the world of pure theory. That led him to the Institute for Defense Analysis, where he worked with the NSA, helping crack Soviet codes. It wasn't glamorous work. Picture rooms filled with punch card machines and early computers, where Simmons and his team dug into encrypted Soviet messages, looking for patterns buried in the noise. Every breakthrough mattered. Cracking a code could shift military strategy or uncover hidden enemy plans. For Simmons, it was the perfect match of challenge and purpose, gave U.S. intelligence critical edges in the high-stakes espionage game of the Cold War. But Simmons wasn't just a quiet, compliant government scientist. Just like many great minds, Simmons was a critical thinker. And when the Vietnam War escalated, he couldn't stay silent. In 1967, while still holding a sensitive government job, Simmons published a public letter criticizing U.S. policy. And the next year, he was fired. But that loss turned into his next big opportunity. He returned to academia, and this time he shocked even himself with what he achieved. What started as pure curiosity would soon lead to discoveries that opened doors far beyond the world of mathematics. Jim Simmons landed at Stony Brook University in New York, a school not yet famous for mathematics, but under his leadership, that would change fast. Simmons wasn't just teaching, he was building a community. He had a rare gift, not just for doing brilliant work himself, but for spotting young talent and creating a place where sharp minds could experiment freely. His department became a magnet for top researchers, a place with bold ideas floating around and mathematicians taking big risks. And that's what had happened. Working alongside the legendary mathematician Xing-Chen Shern, Simmons co-developed what's now called the Shern-Simmons theory, an abstract breakthrough in geometry that mapped out strange new properties of shapes and spaces. At the time, no one quite knew where it would lead. But decades later, this work would become foundational to quantum physics and string theory, helping scientists to describe how the universe itself might be woven together. In other words, the puzzles Simmons loved as a kid had scaled up. He wasn't just solving classroom problems anymore. He was reshaping the theoretical backbone of science. But here's where it gets interesting. Even with all the accolades, Simmons felt restless. He had won top prizes, led a world-class map department, and achieved things most academics could only dream of. And yet, he couldn't shake the sense that the same mathematical tools, the same pattern-finding instincts, might crack something even bigger. What if these ideas could unlock the hidden movements of global financial markets? What if the next great puzzle wasn't just in pure math, but in the rhymes of money itself? That relentless question set the stage for his next move, one that would leave both Wall Street and the scientific world stunned. So in 1978, driven by the relentless curiosity, Simmons made a bold move. He left academia and launched his own investment firm, Monometrics. It wasn't a glamorous operation, just a small office filled with people crunching numbers, running tests, and debating models late into the night. At first, it was rough. The financial markets didn't give up their secrets easily. Simmons and his team faced constant setbacks. Models that looked promising would collapse under new data. Strategies that worked one month would fail the next. In the early 1990s, Simmons brought in a group of IDN speech recognition experts, people who specialized in analyzing noisy data and pulling out meaningful signals, even when patterns were subtle or buried. These were some of the earliest data scientists, long before the term became common. They weren't interested in stock tips or headlines. They were interested in numbers, signals, and predictive models. Together, Simmons and his teams rebuilt Renaissance Technologies trading systems into something far more powerful, a set of algorithms that could process massive amounts of historical data, test hypotheses, and execute trades faster and more precisely than human traders ever could. The team ran tests on decades of past prices, searching for reliable signals that could be exploited systematically, over and over at scale. By 1988, Renaissance launched its flagship product, the Medallion Fund. And here's where things got truly remarkable. Medallion wasn't just successful, it was wildly, almost absurdly profitable. Over the next 2 decades, the fund averaged annual gross returns of about 66%. That's not a typo. Even after fees, employees saw net returns around 40% per year, more than double what most top funds could dream of. To protect these gains, Simmons made a radical decision in the 1990s. He closed the Medallion Fund to outside investors. From that point on, only Renaissance employees could invest. This created one of the most exclusive and secretive money machines in the world. A fund so tightly guarded that even insiders didn't always know the full details of how every system worked. In just a few years, Jim Simmons turned mathematical research into a billion-dollar fortune, shocking everyone that a brilliant mathematician, along with a group of science nerds, could outperform Wall Street and seasoned investors like Warren Buffett. The culture inside Renaissance was unlike anything on Wall Street. It was collaborative, research-driven, and brutally analytical. If a new idea didn't survive rigorous testing, it was thrown out, no matter who proposed it. There were no star traders, no celebrity egos, just a collective mission to squeeze every drop of insight from the data. By the late 1990s, in the early 2000s, Renaissance had become the undisputed king of quantitative finance, inspiring a wave of imitators, but no true equals. The part of the story that surprises people the most isn't how Jim Simmons made his billions, it's what he chose to do with them afterward. Jim Simmons wasn't just the math genius who cracked Wall Street. He became one of the most influential science donors the world had ever seen, giving away billions, funding breakthroughs, and reshaping research across the globe. By the time of his passing in 2024, Simmons had amassed an estimated $30 billion fortune. And while he lived relatively modestly compared to other billionaires, he did enjoy a few unmistakable luxuries. His most famous indulgence? The Archimedes, a stunning 222-foot super yacht worth over $100 million. Custom-built by the legendary Dutch shipyard Hedge. With space for 16 guests and a full crew, it featured everything from a massive pool and hot tub to mega suites and grand dining halls. Even this yacht became part of his quiet generosity. When Simmons learned about a family with a gravely ill child, he offered them the Archimedes. Crew, doctor, everything, so they could take a trip of a lifetime. No press, no headlines, just a quiet act of kindness. Aside from the yacht, Simmons owned prime real estate on Long Island, a valuable art collection, and traveled by private jet. But he never became one of those billionaires known for flashy displays. For him, wealth was a tool, not a show. Life, however, was not without heartbreak. Jim and Marilyn suffered unimaginable personal loss. Their son Paul died in a bicycle accident. And years later, their son Mick drowned. Through it all, Jim turned to the only thing that had always anchored him: math. Even in his 70s, he co-authored new research papers, not because he needed recognition, but because solving puzzles was simply part of who he was. The Simmons Foundation, which he and Marilyn launched in 1994, has given away billions supporting autism research, math and science initiatives, and creating Flatiron Institute, a cutting-edge computational science center. In 2023, they made headlines with a record-breaking $500 million gift to Stony Brook University, the largest unrestricted donation ever to a U.S. public university. So next time you hear about legendary investors, remember, the greatest of all wasn't the flashiest or the loudest. Jim Simmons outperformed the market using math, and then he used his fortune to try and make the world a better place. Imagine using your own skills, the ones you already have, to break into a new industry and build something extraordinary. That's the real power of this story. If you're an entrepreneur in the making, or just someone who wants unique, untold entrepreneurial stories, subscribe to our channel. We will release new stories every Thursday and would love to hear your comments and feedback.